Thank you for joining us. We really appreciate your time here tonight. My name is Allison Venuto, and I am one of the board members of American Pilgrims on the Camino. And tonight we have two speakers who are going to talk with us about their multi-generational Camino. And our first speaker, Kristin, I'm going to turn it over to you so that you can get us started.
Great. Thank you so much. Let me just share screen. And there we go. Can you see my screen? No, you can't.
Hold on just a second. Let me.
Oh, yeah.
Oh,
can you see it now?
Nope, we can't. Hold on just a second. Let me get off this.
Okay.
All right, now try it.
Okay, let me stop and then let me share it again. Okay. Share.
There we go. Now we can see it.
Great. Wonderful. Okay, so I'm going to hide the chat real quick. It's so nice to have everyone on here. Thank you so much. As you know, I'm going to share about the multi-generational Camino. So who you see in that photo pictured is my mom, Holly, who's actually on the line now, and my husband, Rob, and my two kids, Kalea and Hudson. So here we go. Yeah, so my name is Kristin DeCou. I'm here because I love the Camino and I love adventuring with our kids. The photo that you see right here is from our first Camino, the Camino Frances, in September 2017. And I'm going to kind of go through our own journey a little bit, share some of our lessons and tips, things that we picked up along the way. And then I know we'll have time for questions at the end. And so if you have questions for me, for Elena, you can drop them in the chat, but we do have a dedicated time and space for questions. And then my husband's here as well. And so fire away. I just want to open up that if there is one thing you take away from this presentation, if you're thinking, can you walk the Camino with kids? What about with an older parent or a grandparent? What about both? That the number one thing I want you to take away is you absolutely can do it. Will it be maybe a little slower? Sure. Will it have different variations and will there be different emotions with kids and with family dynamics? Yes, but you can absolutely do it. So if you're on the fence, I want you to come away with this idea that yes, I can do the Camino with my kids or with my family. So this is a little bit about me. In 2017, I was let go of my job. I had already thought about the Camino for a long time, like 3 to 5 years, I guess. Really wanted to do it, never could take a month off. And as soon as I was let go, within 30 days, we did the Camino Frances with our 1-year-old son. So who you see here is Hudson eating some spaghetti. This is my husband. And Hudson and I, we got a balloon at this carnival at the beginning. And we had an amazing experience over these 30 days. He was the only baby we saw. So he got a lot of attention. We would hear that we're Hudson's parents. Like, oh, it's Hudson's parents. And he was pretty happy along the way. We definitely had daily meltdowns, at least one point. Between the stroller and then sometimes we had a Bob stroller and then I would carry him for 1 to 2 hours a day. But we loved it so much we went back again. So we had a Camino baby, Kalea. Her name in Galician means like street, like calle, but we took it to mean journey. So Kalea is part of our Camino journey. So we literally named her Kalea. And we went back 2 years later with now another 1-year-old. And then Hudson was 3. And this time we brought my mom, Holly, who again is on this Zoom call. And we took a double stroller. So there was 5 of us. And that had its own dynamics, doing the Camino Portuguese from Porto. So 150 miles, that took us 2 weeks. And then the Camino Frances, which took us 32 days, I believe. So just wanted to give you some context that we did our first Camino 2017, our next Camino 2019, and we were going to go back every 2 years, but then COVID hit. So we're trying to figure out what the Camino looks like for us going forward, but we do want to do another route and hopefully go back in the next 1 to 2 years. So I think my mom said it really well in that, you know, when you think of a Camino, normally it's a pilgrimage and very spiritual. And I think, you know, when you think about this, you know, it's not a vacation, it's an adventure. And I like to think that when you're going as a family or when you're going with kids, it is very much an adventure. The definition of adventure is unusual, exciting, typically hazardous journey or experience. And yes, there are things that went wrong. I think we got caught in a forest fire one time, had to stop. It was like smoke everywhere. He had meltdowns. We had weather issues. It was really hot the first year. Lots of unknowns in terms of how your kids will respond in different situations. But it was our family's one of our greatest adventures. And so if you think about the Camino as an adventure, it can be very exciting, realizing there are lots of unknowns. So within that, I think a good theme to keep in mind is this idea that if you've been on the Camino, you know this, but that the Camino provides. So when you have kids, you know, you have to take care of, I'm specifically talking as a mom right now, but even caring for my mom and making sure she has what she needs. You know, one example is we were walking all day. We were going to a little village that was 5 miles from any other village. And we arrived late in the day. We would typically have to leave at 8, get in at 4. So other pilgrims usually would get all the great albergues. And we arrived in this little village and there was no rooms. And the owner of the albergue said, listen, we will find you a bed. So we ended up getting a mattress on a wire box spring. It kind of felt like a dungeon. I'm not going to lie. It felt very spooky. It was in the basement, no windows. It was like, we're in the dungeon, but we had a bed. So I think it's just important to remember that it might look differently than you think. And you might have this ideal vision that you're going to be staying in the albergue and, oh, it's going to be so fun. But sometimes, you know, there's no beds and sometimes there's no rooms and then you get the dungeon, but that's okay. We left early the next day at like 4 a.m., hit the road and made sure we got into the next village very early. But just this idea that the Camino does provide in more ways than you can imagine. So that's not the only challenge. I mean, I think the 3 big challenges for us as a family and with kids is sleep. Our kids were taking naps. And so you really need to plan according to when they're going to take the nap. So we knew that for them, it was like 12 to 2. So we planned to either do lunch then or find a flat, you know, if there was a flat terrain, try and be around there. But yeah, it's a little tricky on timing. You don't know what the terrain is going to be. As you see here, there's steps, and that's tricky with a stroller. Even for an older parent or grandparent, the cobblestone streets, you know, need to have some really good shoes, just the wear and tear. And then weather. We lucked out on our first Camino. In the 32 days, we had a day and a half of rain, but you need to plan for that. So for example, we did have a cover for our Bob stroller. We each had like a very light rain jacket. And our son was fine. We had an extra blanket, but you do have to keep those things in mind because some days the weather was really hot. So we kind of had to take a siesta. And some days it's really rainy and cold. And so you got to plan. But I think some of the best parts for us were obviously the people. And I think you hear about this, and many of you that have walked the Camino, the people are really what make the pilgrimage, as well as all of the things that you embrace and let go along the way. And so the woman pictured here, Lisa, she is actually someone we're going to see tomorrow. She lives in Seattle. We live outside of Seattle, and we're going to have a little reunion with her. We probably see her every 6 to 12 months. And she was kind of Hudson's Camino grandma on the Camino Frances, and we've stayed in touch. And so I think that's a great example of, especially kids tend to bring people together. Generally, sometimes you might think the opposite, but people gravitate toward little kids on the Camino. And then I think quality time. So as a family, for sure, how often do you get 24/7 with your kids doing an experience with all of these memories? And so we realized the first time 32 days straight with Hudson, and I had worked full time before that, was so enriching to me. I got to know my son so much better. And we really wanted Kalea and Hudson to have that experience. And so I think something we come back to is this idea that the golden rule, for us at least, was staying flexible, having a plan B and C for when you arrive in a city or a village and there is no bed, or the weather turns and you need to get some ponchos, or whatever that is. Always, as a parent or looking after an older parent or younger kid, thinking about what would be a backup plan so that you're not stressed out and kind of left without options. Again, trusting that the Camino provides, but still planning, which is important. But we've found that kind of the biggest determinant of success is your family's temperament. At first, when we went with our kids, it was our son's temperament. Does he like being outside? How does he deal with meeting new people? He's super social. That is great. But I think also with different family members, there's different dynamics. So really tuning into, is everyone on the same page of what we're doing, why we're doing it, and our desire to kind of stick together along the way? And a few tips that have been really helpful for us and that we learned after 2 Caminos. The first one is just building in extra time. So this last Camino, we had 5 people in our party. So the more people in your party, the more stops you'll have to make and the more time it takes to get from point A to point B. So you really need to factor that in. Number 2, book ahead. So we've learned at least, so there's 5 of us. Again, with 3 of us and 2 and a baby, we could kind of get away with just booking the morning of. And most of the time we would go on booking.com and book an albergue or a private room or something that would allow us, the 3 of us, to be together. But when you have 5 people, you can't really just chance that there's going to be 5 dorm beds necessarily in an albergue. So we almost always had to do some type of a private room or a double room in an albergue or something like that. But definitely booking at least 1 day ahead, because then you have a place to stay. Really, really important. And then this last thing is breaking bread. This idea that a meal is more than just a meal. And so it's really important to find ways to connect with pilgrims around the table and along the way. And on that note, we did the Camino Portuguese, and we found that because we weren't staying in albergues, we almost never had communal meals. And that was I felt like we kind of missed out because the Camino Frances, we had all of these communal meals where you got to know people. But when you only stay in your family and you're not getting to know other pilgrims around the table, I feel like you're missing out. And so really being intentional about finding ways to do that. So a roadmap, just a few more slides. This is really what we did, but you can do whatever you want or need to do. So for us, we joined the national chapter. I know you're all members, but then really honing in on the local chapter. And we found kind of a mentor that helped us, especially for our first Camino, kind of get it all together. What do we need? How do we do it? She hadn't walked the Camino with kids, but so many things overlap that doesn't matter what stage of life you're in, a lot of the things are the same. Second, research, buy a guidebook. I liked John Brierley's. We did that for both Caminos. That's my favorite. But I would also have an app of a second guidebook that was on either Audible or my phone. So I could have at least a second guidebook to refer back to. And then once you've done some research, really connect with experienced pilgrims. So I remember I found 2 families that walked with kids, and I sent them a message. One was an email, one was like an Instagram message, just to ask this very specific questions that I had for my family. And I've had people do that with me, and I'm happy. If you have any questions after this presentation, my contact information is at the end. Please reach out to me. I love helping families feel prepared for the Camino. And then again, making a plan, dates, destinations, your to-do list, and then shopping for gear. REI garage sale is a great spot. Booking flights, and then booking that first night's accommodation. I think we were a little bit late, and when we booked in Saint Jean Pied de Port, I feel like everything was out. So we should have booked, so maybe even first and second night's accommodation if you can, when you're in France, Spain, or wherever you're starting. And then, Buen Camino, really just enjoy the journey and the time that you have with your family. I did want to have a special shout out for gear, because we did different things on our different Caminos. And also to really try out your gear ahead of time. So for example, with our son Hudson, I found this great hard frame backpack for our 1-year-old. And I put it on, and we bought it from the REI garage sale. And we put Hudson in it around our neighborhood, and he cried instantly. And we thought, okay, maybe this is like kind of a one-off. And then we tried it again, and he cried. And so that was not a good option. So we ended up going with our tried and true Ergo pack that you see here. We had the single bob stroller, which is very durable. And then for the second Camino, we decided to bring Hudson's scooter because the Portuguese route is fairly flat. It's mostly paved. And we thought he would have a good time and be able to actually keep up with us. We knew that he would be able to walk the whole way as a 3-year-old. And that was amazing. So you can even see it. If you look at the double stroller, which is what we had the second time, you can see a little scooter there hanging out. We also did not carry backpacks. We put our backpacks on the stroller, which allowed us to go get a lot more mileage in our days. That said, my husband had some muscle issues pushing the stroller up the hills, and but it worked out great for us to, especially the Camino friends, as we could cover at least 15 miles a day. We're not carrying anything. And then the Camino Portuguese, we did about 10 miles a day with my mom and the 2 kids. But again, the scooter was great. I've never heard of anyone else bringing a scooter. But I point that out so that you can do what works for you. You don't have to have seen someone else do it. You can just forge your own path. And then lastly, I just wanted to share some photos from, I have so many photos from both of these trips, but this idea that the memories that you share with your family on the Camino are priceless. I think about this trip, and there's this idea of a return on adventure. You have an ROI for things you do at work, but the return on adventure and the how many times I see these photos and they bring me joy, and I go back to them and they show up in my social feed, whatever that is, I love it. And this woman with Hudson as a 1-year-old said she's the youngest pilgrim she had ever seen. And so there's so many little moments at the river, playing at the parks. There's parks all along the way. Just so many cool experiences and memories that we will cherish for a very long time. And so if in doubt, just the memories alone make the trip worthwhile. Just want to say thank you. You can find me at, Facebook, Instagram, and then we have a website we created. It does not have any new content after our Caminos, but it's tinyshellcamino.com. And then we also post it on social media with the hashtag tinyshellcamino. So like Hudson was our little tiny shell. So you can find me there or look me up, but I'm happy to answer questions towards the end of this event, or you can reach out to me directly. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Kristin. We really appreciate it. Elena, I'm going to throw it over to you.
All right. I could just figure out how to share my screen. That would be great. Here we go. Please tell me if you can see it.
Yes, we
can see it.
Great.
And does it show the presentation? Here we go. So my name is Elena Szeremeta, and my take on the Camino is a little different. If it feels like Kristin is so organized, and I can relate with you on so many things, even naming the kids after, Kailea in Galician. We have a daughter whose name is Stella after Compostela. And our little kids are actually almost like the opposite, same ages, but a boy and a girl, the same ages like Kristin. So we're like so related on the Camino. So, but my take on it is that you will be herding cats whenever you have more than one person walking on the Camino with you. It's not going to be easy, but it will certainly be fun. And so here in this main photo, I was called to do the Camino with just my boys, with my husband Dobry and my oldest son Philip, and little Arthur. Arthur there in the backpack actually took his first steps near El Sobrero, so he's definitely a Camino baby. And that picture is in front of the Castillo de los Templarios in Ponferrada. Very special place for me and our entire family. So this trip was just the boys and mom, but we also here have baby Stella in one picture, who was about the same age as Arthur, and they looked pretty much the same. Both kind of bald. So in these pictures, they were about a year old. And they were just absolutely the highlight of so many people's Camino. We were followed like paparazzi, with essentially paparazzi pilgrims who just wanted to snap the photo, and and they kept saying, well, thank you, it's such good luck to meet your family. And that felt really, really special. And the reason that I mentioned that is, if you're not sure how people would react to different family members other than adult age, please don't worry at all. Other pilgrims, the locals, everyone just loves children of any age, even if it's already a young adult, not necessarily babies that and toddlers that Kristin and I took with us. Even everyone loved my teenager as well. And he actually had some of the best conversations with other pilgrims. He would just walk away from us, and I was like, hey buddy, you're okay? And he would just wave, and yeah, I'm good. I'm having a wonderful 2-hour conversation with this lawyer that he met. So it was quite fun. So everyone enjoys pilgrims of all ages. That was our experience. And so that was one thing that I wanted to mention if you're considering bringing people of different age. And here in this picture, Stella was 6 months old. That was on the Portuguese coastal way, just entering the town called Oia, and with this beautiful monastery just a couple minutes up ahead. And everyone loved her, but for some reason they kept saying pobrecita, pobrecita. And if anyone speaks Spanish, it means poor little one. And I was like, no, but she's quite happy. But everyone was just so in love with our kids, and just so entertaining. The one thing we had to get used to is that they would just take your child and go hug the child, go give things, take them behind the bar, give them fruits and stuff like that. And, that's a little unusual, because both the Portuguese and the Spanish people are more touchy-feely than what we were used to. So that was an adjustment, but after a while, it was okay. The good thing is that it was all good emotions and good expressions of affection from the locals and other pilgrims. So it was great. So a couple bullet points here. It's just perfectly fine from our experience to take your children and grandchildren, of any age. Everyone's gonna be happy and love them. So that would be just fine in case you're on the fence about it. But if anyone knows me, I'm definitely a planner. So we like to plan our trips ahead. And my main thing is to kind of know what your pace would be in whatever aggregation of family members that you would be going with. If you could try to get in some practice walks to get an idea of how much you can walk each day, because what we found for us, it was less stressful to have the places booked ahead so that we didn't have to worry about running out of beds. And here you have a baby or a toddler or a cranky teenager, and you have to keep looking for different accommodations. So for my personal preference, that meant that we kind of needed to know how far we can get along each day. But of course, it doesn't work out always as you plan, but it's still joyful along the way. But at least for me personally, not having to worry about finding a place to stay at the end of the day, that means you can have that extra ice cream or another helping of pulpo. That was something that got our teenager to keep going. It was ice cream and pulpo, and every time we could promise him that for lunch and extra for dinner. And so we just kind of enticed him with that. So, but for me, that meant, we could just take our time during the day and show up whenever and know that we'd be accommodated. And the sweet thing about that too, when we said that we need a baby crib, or, in our reservations, or we were traveling with children, oh my goodness, you should see all kinds of beautiful bedding that the bed and breakfast or the hotels prepared for us. It was just, these little pillows and fluffy blankets, and they was just so cute. And some of the cribs really looked like they were in those families for generations. They would be your solid wood bed, and would be really heavy, and I would always wonder, how in the world did they get it up here in our room with these stairs? And there was just, we experienced so much love traveling with the children. And we with the littles, we've only stayed in private rooms because we don't want them disturbing other people during the night if they wake up and cry or something like that. But with the teenager, we've stayed in the albergues, and that was just fine. We got special perks with him too. So in the albergues, sometimes if there was a possibility to put us in a smaller room with 4 beds, the host would definitely try to do that. So there are perks in walking with the children. So that's what I wanted to say here. Definitely get help if you need it. Don't compete with others, because you're going to be in your own little world with just everyone's personalities on the road, different pace, different preferences. Some family members like to walk faster. Some people want to walk slower. And sometimes you just gotta, have some sugar to keep the littles going. Just depends. So definitely don't compete, and try to stick together. Perhaps come up with a meeting point if someone likes to walk faster, that we'll see you in a couple hours in such and such town, so that everyone can have some personal space, if everyone's at the age when you could do that, and walk at their own pace too. One thing here, when we say get rest or help is needed, on the way to Ocebrero, my teenager actually got to ride a horse, and that was an amazing experience for him. Not because he necessarily couldn't walk, but he just wanted to do something fun, and he got got to ride up the hill and chat with other pilgrims as they were going up, and then he just waited there with the guide for us until we walked up with the little one up the hill. So, but there was one lady who was also riding the horse with that group, and really her feet, she was wearing little ballet slippers, and she showed us her feet. They really took a beating a couple days before, and I thought it was such a smart decision that she gave herself a day of rest and, you know, a chance to air out and rest her feet and not keep endangering the whole trip afterwards. So I thought that was a smart decision too. Something else we found out, because my mom has also walked with us on the Camino, it's really cool if not everyone wants to walk exactly, you know, 100% of the time, and if you have younger members of the family or people who don't want to walk as much, you could still have a wonderful experience. You know, if, for example, they walk with you for half the day, but for the other half of the day, they can get a ride and wait for you in the next village, because then you're still keeping the family together. You're still having the experiences that you're meant to have together on the Camino. But when they get to that next village in the next town, they're gonna have the wonderful time just waiting for you. So for example, my mom and my daughter had the best time looking at everyone's chickens and puppies and you know, and kittens. And so it was really great. And so then on that particular trip, I could walk as much as I wanted to at my pace, and they could have their bonding time, and no one had to suffer and no one got hurt, you know. So and it was still really wonderful, and it became part of our family story that my daughter could be with her grandma on the Camino and enjoying it in their own personal way. So that was really, really special. And talking about stories, you know, depending at what age your family members are that are coming with you, but I think not only kids, all of us love stories. So if, you know, especially the story about St. James or Santiago is so interesting, you could definitely share it with your family members in a very kind and thoughtful way, and perhaps, you know, even have that as a topic of discussion as you're on the way. But for little kids, anytime they can hear a fairy tale or a story, that just makes it that much more special and keeps it more interesting for them to keep going. And also Santiago's story gives us a chance to touch on other pilgrimages, for example, in Jerusalem and Rome and other ways of, and different legends from different routes and different saints and so on. So you could really take this idea as far as, you know, as far as you want, and research, you know, the significance of other routes as well, not just St. James Camino. So, and even for an adult, if you like history, you know, that you could just enjoy that as much as you want. And that really builds your personal depth of the experience on the Camino. The more you learn about the history and the significance of the events that took place on each route, or, you know, or what each route symbolizes for us. Now here at the bottom, my little footnote is how many uses can you find for a pilgrim scallop shell? That is something that we can all play on the Camino, whether we're children or adults, right? Just to make it a little more entertaining, because technically many people had tried to trace the origin and why the scallop shell became the symbol of the Camino. But in the old days, I'm sure it was quite practical. So I think it'll be quite fun to see what you can use it for these days in a, in a gentle, caring way, whether you could use it to drink water from the fountain or collect wild berries, it's up to you. So something else you could play with is to set the mood for each Camino. And this is a picture that I took at the library in the castle in Ponferrada. And I think both young and older people love the stories, the fairy tales, the nights, the secret missions. So you could definitely add another layer to this family Camino experience that you will have, because it will become part of your family's story, and you could take it to a completely different level by being mindful and present and learning about the Camino history, but especially castles and so on, especially with the children, they will enjoy exploring it and just looking for different points of attraction. You could read books about the Camino and see if anyone, read about the kings and the queens and different, or Christopher Columbus, for example, is very significant as it relates for the Portuguese way, because it's likely that Pinta and La Niña had sailed out of Pontevedra, and that the boats were built in that area. So along the Portuguese way, you'll actually see a lot of the ship replicas. And so it just makes the history of the Camino come alive as you bring your family to it. And you could really imagine how a lot of these different events happened, and you could see where it took place. So it makes it that much more interesting. And talking about the books and the fact that I had children, I wanted to play a little trick, and I actually wrote a book in which my kids are the main characters, and they do go on a secret mission to Santiago. They're little pilgrims. So my hope is that other children, and not only, it's not a kid's book per se, but that both the children and the adults can envision some of these places along the way that would make their interest in the Camino peak. And then the children are saying, okay, we want to go along, instead of sometimes the parents saying, well, the parents are the initiators of the Camino, but this could actually turn things around where the kids want to go on this adventure as well. So that's why I read my book, just to make it more like a fairy tale and something that everyone can relate to, and perhaps be one more impetus to doing the Camino. And let's see. Another fun thing we could do here is the Pilgrim's credential, right? So that, I think, is such a fun tool. Not only is it practical, but it really helps you remember different special places where you stayed, where you amazing meals that you had. So with children and different members of the family, you could just have so much fun looking at each stamp. And so I think the Compostela itself is a wonderful tool that you could use to add different points of interest to, and then have something to reminisce about years later, because the Camino again will be part of your family stories. But if you're going with younger children, perhaps you could get an extra pilgrim passport and get more stamps that you actually need, and just play with the kids, have them see how many places along each day they can find that will stamp their Compostela. You know, maybe if adults normally will get 1 or 2 a day, right? The kids can go get 10. Why not? We're all just having fun, right? So you can find different keepsakes or seashells to collect along the way. You know, play the I Spy across or shelf, see how many of those you can find each day. And another wonderful thing I find is when pilgrims bring small gifts from home and then offer it to other pilgrims they meet along the way. It could be, you know, little hearts or stones that mean something to you. And you could actually do that as a family of any age before you leave on the Camino. I got a really special little drum on the keychain from a friend that I met from South Korea on my very first Camino, and I still have it on my pack. Every time I go on the Camino, it's still with me. So you never know when little gestures like that can really cheer someone up, and for how long after the Camino had finished. So that's really cool. And you can actually also make your own stamp. It's quite easy there. I had made one when we were designing my book. So there's our cat Tiger and the pilgrim shell and the sun and the moon that are very significant. So we made our own stamp, but you can design your own as well and just upload the picture, and there's specific websites that will make it for you. I think at the time we paid like $30 or $35 to make the stamp. So then when you have your own stamp and all your new Camino family that you meet as you're walking, you can stamp their Compostelas with your special family stamp. And you can put any symbol on there that is special to you. So make it personal. So I thought that was quite a fun game that you could play no matter what age you are. And I think that's about all the slides I wanted to cover, but I definitely keep coming back, especially recently, to the fact that this will be part of your family's history and part of your family's story. And you actually never know what multi-generational challenges it will help you transmute. So for example, my grandmother, when she was little, she had to walk about over 1,000 kilometers on foot, not for a great reason. They were running away from an invasion in our hometown during the war. But, you know, and so those stories were in our family, that they had to walk so much as little girls. But, you know, a couple and grandma was not able to come on the Camino with us. But, you know, a few generations later, here I am. I have easily walked, you know, thousands and thousands of kilometers, right? But I actually do it for fun and I actually enjoy it. So something that was a challenge in one generation can actually transmute and grow in different ways as we all go through our learning, both as a family and as humanity. So I think the Camino really helps us do that. It helps us shed a different light on something that different generations in our family may have dealt with, but now we have a different experience with that, and we can actually heal it forward and backwards. So I think that's the magic of the Camino. So that's what I wanted to share for today.
Thank you, Elena, and thank you, Kristin. Also, what a wonderful talk you guys gave. Elena, we had a couple questions in the chat for you. The first one was, were there any difficulties convincing your older son to leave his comfort zone away from friends, video games, all of that?
Definitely. And the interesting thing is that I got unexpected help. So just like Kristin mentioned, the Camino provides, the help arrived from a local, my children grew up with the Colorado chapter of American Pilgrims. Oops, not sure why the video went out. I think Allison, something's up with my video. Here it is. So all three of my children grew up with the Colorado chapter. And so on one of the walks that the chapter volunteers organized, one of the members, I still remember her name is Agnes, she told my son, there's really yummy food. And he said, well, what kind? And she said, well, do they have sushi? And she said, they don't have sushi usually, but they have really yummy octopus. And that is how when eventually, that was one thing that helped him keep going, right? I said, Philip, we're gonna go. And then he said, all right, only if I have octopus each day. I said, as much as we can find it. So to answer your question is, I think you're gonna need, you know your children best, so you're gonna need to find that one thing that you can always bribe them with. And so we did bring at the time, I don't even know what he was playing, a Game Boy or something like that. So we would let him play a little bit once we got to the hotel and had Wi-Fi. So he wasn't completely away from all the electronics, but much less than he normally would be. So, and that was a blessing of the Camino. You would just say, sorry, we're walking, there's no Wi-Fi, but if you get there, and the sooner you get there, the sooner you can play. So that was one little trick.
That's great. And then Elena, there was another question for you. Did you book in private albergues because you mentioned reservations?
So on the first trip that we took with our teenager, we were walking and we booked in private. Sorry, we did not book anything. We walked and stayed in municipal albergues and in private as well. Now, I make Camino reservations. It's my occupation. I support so I have my own resources right now. So I support Pilgrims on the Camino. So you can make reservations on private albergues yourself, yes. But just with the little kids, for our family, it's been more comfortable to have a private bathroom too, because they have to go to the bathroom like every half an hour. So it's helpful to be somewhere where you have a bathroom and in your own room. So we actually haven't stayed with the littles. We have not stayed in the albergues, but I know Kristin has it. I'm sure she can add some valuable information to that.
Yes. So we also generally stayed in private rooms. I remember this, we stayed in a monastery, very memorable. All the hotels were full, no private rooms were available. And this monastery it was one giant room with 50 bunk beds. And we didn't want Hudson falling off. He was one. So we put one of the mats on the floor. They gave us blankets. It was very stressful for me as a mother because there's lots of snoring, lots of noises. He was waking up, he needed milk. I was rushing to get the milk. So it was stressful for me as a mom to manage him in a group of people. And then the snoring, we didn't sleep very well at all. It was our worst night of sleep. So to get good sleep, I mean, kids wake you up anyway. So to get good sleep, to have the peace of mind that you're in your own space, that is really important. And so while we would try and find something that was an albergue or a hotel that had a common area where you could share the Pilgrims meal, but you had your own room. And that was the winning combo for us.
And Kristin, there was a question for you. Do you recommend the Bob style stroller for children 4 to 6?
Yeah, I didn't write an answer because I think it depends. So our kids are 4 and 6 right now. And part of us, we want to wait to do the Camino because they're in this awkward stage of they can't really walk 10 to 15 miles a day, or maybe they could, but they're too big for a stroller. Maybe our 4-year-old, but we're not like our 6-year-old. We gave our double Bob to a friend. So I think part of us, we're going to wait. So I feel like you can do the Camino with young kids. And then obviously when kids are 8, 10, they can walk a fair amount on their own. So we're in this awkward stage where, we're unsure that they would be able to do the mileage we would need based on the time we have. So we're going to wait until maybe they're 6 and 8. And I think our daughter could definitely do maybe like 8 miles or more a day. But we did meet this young girl who was 10 and, she was doing 10 miles a day with her parents and they did the full Camino. But I think the Bob, it just depends on your family. If you think the 6-year-old, if it would be helpful to stay in the Bob. I mean, I think another thing, just one more addition is the Bob. It sounds amazing and it is amazing on a flat Camino. So my husband though pushed the single Bob on the Camino Frances and that's not flat. He had like, what did you have? It was like almost like some nerve damage in his thighs because of the weight, because we put our backpacks on the stroller. So it weighed like 80 to 100 pounds pushing up the Pyrenees and stuff. So those are my thoughts, but it is that awkward, like the 6 to 5 to 8, hard to say because they can't walk as much. So, yeah. But yes, we recommend the Bob in general for the Camino and for durability with kids.
And Elena, there was a question. Where did you start your Camino or Caminos?
We've walked multiple sections of the French way. We've walked the Portuguese way, the coastal, the central way. We've walked to Finisterre and Murcia. So just kind of all over the place. So I'm happy to answer any questions if someone wants to reach out directly. I'll be happy to talk more about that. And of course, we have a favorite stroller and it's Thule Urban Glide. Mm-hmm. And our baby carrier was Deuter, and we actually have old Deuter backpacks. And I've made a couple different videos about the strollers and all the carry things, and it's on my website at adventurecamino.com, and there's a section that's called Prepare. And so there's a lot of different blog articles there and the videos too. Sorry, I don't have the best TV personality, but I try to make a couple short videos that summarize some of the gear that we use. So everyone is welcome to check them out. So
thanks, Elena. We have time for maybe 1 or 2 more questions. Does anybody have anything else they want to add or ask?
I have one more thing I meant to share earlier. I just thought of it when Elena was talking, but something we also did with the stroller is take the bike route. So if a section is very technical and there's steps and huge boulders, that's pretty difficult in a stroller, but you can take the bike route and you don't have to feel shame or guilt that you're not taking the real route. Especially on O Sobrero, we took the bike route and we had bikers going near us and you still arrive at the same key points. And that's a great option. Also, if you feel like you're unsure of your own footing, take the bike. It's a street, a road. So just something to consider.
Did you have times where you just wanted to ditch the stroller? Because we did for sure.
Anybody have one last question? You get to be our last one for the day.
I just want to ask Kristin if her husband recovered from that awful nerve damage.
Yeah, I'm going to bring him over. He's right here. He's going to be available if there was any questions.
He's our guest speaker.
Our guest. Yeah.
Yeah, no, it actually just started to come up again. So I'm dealing with it and kind of figuring it out. But yeah, it was mainly from, we had it so heavy, so overloaded, then going down the Pyrenees. So just a couple thousand feet inside, that kind of kicked it in, and then continuing to push it for 40 days, just kind of wore it out.
Yeah.
So sorry.
He was the muscle behind the movement. But thank you for asking.
Well, I want to say thank you again to all of you for sharing your evening with us. I put a couple of announcements up here. So the first thing to let you guys know is that if you would like to rewatch this or share this video, it will be up on the American Pilgrims YouTube channel, which you can subscribe to. And you'll see also past events. And then we've got some future events coming up that you'll get emails about. You got emails this week about them. We just had a new edition in, I guess, 10 days. So we've got some folks from Spain who are going to speak with us about some of the activities that are going on in their area of Spain. If you're interested, join us, please. Also, you can get credentials on our website and look at our local chapters and see information that's going on with them. We also have a fun email that's going to be coming out in just a few days, weeks, about some new announcements. So make sure to check your email for that. And also, if you're interested, you can set your Amazon account up via Amazon Smile, and every purchase you make will give American Pilgrims a portion of that. So you're not paying extra, but it's just what you're already doing just goes to us. So, so we thank you for joining us tonight. We thank you for being here, and buen camino to everybody.
Buen camino, and so